Good morning. It is Wednesday, April 26th, 2023. And this morning we're shooting a video on what the new CATL higher battery density announcement could possibly mean for electric vehicles. The announcement was that they developed for aviation and cars batteries with up to 500 watt hours per kilogram of battery of energy density. And I looked it up, and the energy density of my Chevrolet Bolt is 237 watt hours per kilogram. So just double that would be 474 watt hours per kilogram. And that would double our range. Of course, this is not going to happen. This is all hypothetical. But what I did was I wrote a blog on what 2x energy density battery would mean for electric vehicles. And I just used the Chevrolet Bolt as an example of this because I own one and I've experienced with it and traveled with it and so forth. And we had an experience traveling on a recent trip to eastern Oklahoma where we were going from Amarillo into western Oklahoma, towards Norman, Oklahoma. So we stayed overnight in Amarillo, and then our next charging point was Eric, Oklahoma, then Weatherford before we got to Norman, Oklahoma. And this typically happens to you. We got to Amarillo at sunset, and we were late to our motel, but we had to charge. And so we stopped at a fast charger 10 miles before our motel, and we were in a hurry, so we only charged to 65%, up from 25%, figuring that would be enough cushion to get us to Eric, Oklahoma, which is 117 miles away. So we didn't think this would be a problem. So the next morning we left. We didn't want to go the 10 miles the wrong direction back to the charger, so we just headed out. But what we encountered was approximately 10-mile-an-hour headwinds for the whole journey. And I ended up having to drive as slow as 60 miles an hour in order to make it there. And when we got to Eric, Oklahoma, because of our efforts in energy reduction, we got there with 15% state of charge. And we only charged up to 55% because we only had 74 more miles to go to Weatherford, Oklahoma. And we made it there. We had 25% state of charge, and we went ahead and charged up to 80%. So that when we got to our motel in Norman, Oklahoma, we didn't have to bother with charging that day. We just waited till the next day. So this, of course, is a problem. This is one of the problems that people who don't own electric vehicles are worried about. And you do have to be aware of your state of charge and aware of your range. And you have to take steps to mitigate energy consumption when you get into situations like this. What I figured out was that driving at 60 with a 10-mile-an-hour headwind was still the equivalent of driving at 70. So this is the reason we reduced our speed. We didn't want to be trying to do 80. And one of the things that the Chevrolet Bolt has, and I really like it, it has a range estimate on the GOM. In the middle, let's say it says 150 miles. And then up at the top, it'll say your maximum range is, let's say, 180 miles. And then down below at the very bottom, it'll say your minimum range is, let's say, 120 miles. So it gives you a max and a min and a middle range. And then there's these bars. If you're driving efficiently and you're in the green, so this green bar will come up from the average range area in the middle and go up towards the top. And you can kind of interpolate in between it. If it says 150 and it says 180 miles at the top and it's a third of the way up, you know you really have 160 miles of range the way you're driving at that time, and so forth. And what we were encountering was an orange bar which goes down towards the minimum. And so it was buried at the bottom when we were doing 70, so we backed off to 60 and got it to go up. No, it never really did. I don't think it never really got to the middle, but at least wherever it said we had let's say it said we would, driving the way we would have 130 miles of range, and we only had 117 to go. And that's what we were trying to do, was gain on it. And what you really want, at least what I want, is a cushion. I want a cushion of at least 20% on a leg of a journey from between chargers. I don't like arriving at chargers at 10%. 15% is kind of my bottom line. So anyway, now if we had a battery in the car that had double the energy density, and instead of having 260 miles of range for the car, stated range, we'd have 300 or 520, excuse me, and we wouldn't have had any problems here. We could have just driven straight to Weatherford, Oklahoma, or even on to Norman, Oklahoma on just that one charge. And it would totally change the way you drive. You could literally do a day's journey on one battery charge. If you left your home with 100% battery, you wouldn't have any problems at all traveling 400 miles on one charge. And when you got to your destination, let's say a motel with sufficiently high level 2 charging, you could charge overnight back up to 100% even. Might take a 11 kilowatt charging to do that, but DC fast charging would not be a thing that you would normally need for every couple hours of driving. You would maybe stop once a day if you were only charging to 80%. So here's what I came up with. At 100% state of charge, my car would have 518 miles of range. At 60%, 310 miles. And that's what I'd have had. I charged to 65% in Amarillo. I'd have had over 310 miles of range. Could have made it to my destination the next day easily. Maybe stopped if I was eating lunch or something and picked up a quick 10 or 20%, whatever I felt like, and went on my way. So I think this would be a game changer. If you had a battery that would double the energy density, still had the same mass, and relatively the same cost. Obviously, the cost is based on the watt hours for every kilowatt hour. So if you can get that cost is around $100 and still stays the same, you may have twice the kilowatt hours. So your battery's going to cost more because you have more battery capacity. But as long as it's not more than 2x, then we're good to go. Now here's another thing. You don't need a battery it could be only 80% of the size of the battery you have. So it would only be 100 watts instead of 100 kilowatts instead of 130 in my car. And I still would get excellent range and travel characteristics, and the mass of the car would be reduced. And oddly enough, it would have even more range because I'm reducing the mass of the car. So this is a complete win-win if this CATL high energy density battery pans out, and it looks like it is because they're going to be producing them at the end of the year. That's what they say. So there's one other issue which I think is important, and this is why I'm always gave myself the name AeroStealth, and why aerodynamics is so important in electric cars. The Chevrolet Bolt has a drag coefficient of 0.32, and if it had its coefficient of drag reduced down to 0.23, same as a Tesla, it at 70 miles per hour, the car as is requires on level ground, no wind, 27 kilowatts to push it forward. And with a reduction in drag down to 0.23, that would be reduced down to 21 kilowatts. So there again, this is a 20% reduction in energy. So you could even go further, because my cars, and I want to try to state this succinctly, my car's energy consumption in local driving isn't a problem. In the city, I'm getting 130, 140 miles per gallon easily. It's highway driving where all this matters, and this is where the aerodynamics matter. So not only could I have if I have a 2x battery density, not only can I don't have to double the capacity of my battery pack, keeping it the same size, but the energy capacity, I could only go to 80%. Well, I could cut another 20% off of that mass simply by this aerodynamics improvement. So then we'd be down to about 80 kilowatts hours of battery capacity, or something in that neighborhood. Between 80 and 90 would be more than enough for my car, and its mass would be reduced by 40%, the mass around the battery. So there you have it. That's what I wanted to talk about, and I think there's a lot going on this year about battery chemistry, so you're going to keep seeing more and more of this. I think we're on our way to a major breakthrough here. I haven't talked hardly anything about battery chemistries because it's not my area of expertise, and but with all that's going on, you can see it's coming, and the cost reduction also of batteries, and this is all a scalability issue. As we make more and more electric cars, and we're producing batteries in battery factories at scale, the cost is going down. And this is going to be the final nail in the internal combustion engine. I went and seen oh, there it is. I was looking for the timer. I'm sorry. I was at the dentist the other day, and my hygienist was talking to her. She owns a Volvo, and I told her, I said, I seen your Volvo in the parking lot the other day. And she loves her Volvo. And I said, well, that's this beautiful car. I said, the only problem with it is it needs an electric drive. She said, no. It's just, I need my gas engine. She says, I like to go to Taos, and I don't want to have to stop. And this is where some people are, unfortunately. They're just not linked into what's going on with the planet or care about any of these issues. But if you give her a Volvo that would go to Taos, without having to stop to charge. She'd be fine with it. And of course, once she owned one with an electric drive, that would completely convert her. But that's another story. So I think this is our tipping point right here. So you all take care, everybody. We'll see you on down the road. Bye-bye.